Jack Daniels is proudly served in fine establishments, questionable joints, and everywhere in between. So, no matter where you go, in every bar, you'll always know someone by name.
Jack.
Jack and Coke?
Shot of Jack?
Jack Daniels, please.
Right away.
That's what makes Jack, Jack.
Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Jack Daniels and Old No. 7 are registered trademarks. Copyright 2025 Jack Daniels. Tennessee whiskey. 40% alcohol by volume. 80 proof.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and each week I'm joined by a panel of guests to discuss all things fandom and pop culture, primarily from a female perspective. You'll find everything from fanfic, to cosplay, to Schitt's Creek, to Supernatural, and everything in between. So put on your favorite piece of fandom merch, set aside that fanfic that you're writing about your OTP, and sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and today we have kind of a heavy one for you. We are going to be talking about some celebrity deaths that hit us the hardest because, I know some people laugh at it, but celebrity deaths can hit us and make us sad and can be hard, and they can be triggering, honestly, sometimes too, depending on the method of death and everything. So this is going to be a heavy one, and I'm going to give you some trigger warnings in just a minute. But first, let me introduce my lovely panelists. So first up, the host of the new podcast that you should all be following. Okay, real quick, Carla. Hello, Carla.
Hello, Erin. Hello, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining me. And then also here is, I was trying to think of something very clever, and now, the mother of one of the best volleyball players in the whole entire United States. I'm not going to give their name because, but Tiff. Hello, Tiff.
Hi, hey, hello, and thank you for that lovely intro for dear daughter. She does appreciate it, even though she's knocked out right now. Volleyball took a lot out of her today.
Aw. Well, it's hard being great. So...
Greatness personified.
Yes. Well, thank you both for joining me. So before we get into the topic, I just want to give some trigger warnings for suicide, for drug overdoses, for sudden deaths, for... I don't know what everyone's going to be picking, so I'm just kind of going through a bunch of things. For cancer, and... I don't know if anyone is doing one that's murder, so I'm just going to say for murder as well. So trigger warnings for those things. If there is something else that either of you can think of that I didn't mention that might have had to do with the cause of one of the deaths you're going to mention, let me know. So what I first want to start off with is I just want to know, Carla, what was the first celebrity death that you remember having a personal impact on you?
It's hard. I try to go back and think of when I was, a preteen and teenager, and I don't think I was paying attention as much at that point. So it's not until like my late teens that I really started registering, oh, something big has happened. The first one that I remember being like kind of like an almost global impact was Selena, because just everybody that I knew, whether or not they were a fan of hers, it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. And then, the day she died, everybody just heard Selena died. And we're like, what are you talking about? She's so young. And of course, you think anybody can die at any age. It's not reserved for older people. But, a celebrity, somebody who is in the public eye in that way, wow, like, how does this happen? And then you come to find out that it's, the president of her own fan club. And that's another layer of what in the hell? I think, particularly if you're Mexican American, Chicana, again, whether or not you're a fan, it's still something that is with you because she was such a representative of the culture. that it was hard to escape that feeling of loss. Like we've lost somebody who represented us in a positive way when we're constantly being represented as lazy and useless and criminal and all of that. So it's a huge loss.
Yeah. And I think, especially when a death is so sudden like that and so violent, and when the person is so young,
Yeah.
it, can even be more traumatic and more impactful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was a teenager. My younger sister was a much bigger fan, like a much bigger fan. So I know that for her, it was like twice as hard. But yeah, I just remember being just bowled over.
Yeah. And Tiff, who was it for you?
So just Yolanda Saldivar, watch her back. You got parole. You got denied parole. You better be happy because everybody is going to be on your back as soon as you leave that prison. That's all I have to say about that. So,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Selena. Anyway, honestly, I'm going to take it back to the Challenger explosion.
Yeah.
Just in the fact that I don't think people understand how excited our teachers were about a teacher being on board. Krista McAuliffe was like, it was a huge deal for a teacher to be on board a spaceship, essentially, to be on board a rocket. She's going into space. How exciting is that? We watched it live. People are like, what? Nobody watched it live. Are you kidding? We all watched it live because they set aside time for us to watch it live. So I know everybody that was on the East Coast was probably in class and tuned to the news station. I live on the West Coast, so we hadn't gotten to school yet. But trust me, we were watching it at home because it was such a big deal. So that really hit me hard. It's because a rocket exploding, a space shuttle actually exploding? Like, when has that ever happened? Did it ever happen before? We had no context for it. There was literally no context for that happening. So, and I was a little person when that happened. I was a little girl, but I still remember it. Like, I still legitimately remember it. I remember I was at my grandparents' house, watching it on TV. And that was something that stuck with me. So there were seven there was a commander, pilot, mission specialist, and then payload specialist. And Krista McAuliffe was a payload specialist. So those would be my 7, I guess, wrapped up into one that, really that I can remember. I know it's not a celebrity, but at the time it felt like she was a celebrity.
Yeah, she was. And it was treated like that in school because they wheeled in, we had the TV, and I know most of our audience will know what we're talking about, that wheeled in the television, and it was this huge thing. And then, as a kid, it's kind of like, how do you process that, especially that you just instantly went back to just regular school? It was like, it happened, and then it's like, okay, go out and play. I think we were like dismissed for recess early or something. And it's like, what just happened? Are we not going to talk about it? It was very, it fit into a lot of the way things happened during that time, I think.
Right. There's no acknowledgement of what's going on. We're going to push through. It's the 80s of it all, right?
Yeah.
We push through and we focus on our math and we focus on our grammar and, so on and so forth. We're not going to worry about what just happened on TV live, that a space shuttle just exploded on TV. It's okay, children. Let's go have recess. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it was very weird. It was a very weird experience and a weird feeling. Yeah. I remember that one very, very, very clearly. Well, for me, and I know there were ones before this, of course, the Challenger, and there were others, but River Phoenix is for sure the first one that really had an impact on me. And that's actually what inspired me to do this, because we have been wanting to cover River Phoenix year after year, and it's just been hard because most of his movies aren't available to stream, which, get your shit together, streamers. And River Phoenix died on Halloween in 1993. And so I was a teenager. And I remember very vividly being like at a restaurant with some friends and finding out there that it happened. And it was just such a shock, especially because, he died from a drug overdose. And River Phoenix had always seemed like this person that was not in that same world of Hollywood. And he really hated being famous. He hated being famous so much. And I think that's a lot of what I'm just theorizing here, but I think that's what kind of led to his downfall, to his tragic death, was being in this limelight that he didn't want. And hearing, the audio of Joaquin calling an ambulance. And if you've ever read or listened to or heard an interview with Joaquin talking about it, which he doesn't like to talk about it very much, but he talked about it when he got older, it's really heartbreaking because River was like everything to their family and to him. And River Phoenix always seemed like a very, very sensitive person. He was like a huge animal rights activist, a huge activist for the planet, for everything. And he grew up in a cult. When they were younger, they were in a cult, the Children of God cult. And they, their parents got them out of that. But I think he was like this once in a lifetime kind of actor who, I don't know, we've really had anyone like him since him. And it's so heartbreaking on a personal level. And then also on a level of all the art that we missed because of this. And I remember so clearly, like, that summer, like this movie called The Thing Called Love, which a lot of people don't talk about that movie. It has Sandra Bullock in it before people knew who she was, really. And Dermot Mulroney and Samantha Mathis and River Phoenix. And it's a movie about country music and country music singers and stuff. And I actually really like it. And it's a romance and everything. And I remember watching that movie and thinking, there's something off about him in this movie. And I guess that was when he was really, really heavy into drug use. And he was still good, though. He was still incredibly good in the movie. It was just felt a little bit disconnected. But you watch his body of work, starting with, way back in with Stand By Me, even starting in, he was in an episode of Family Ties, playing like a very, like a genius level, kid who wants to date Jennifer, he says so. And he just had such a lasting legacy of film work, and he wasn't around that long, but he was just incredible. And I know also, Keanu Reeves has always talked about how devastating it was for him. That was his best friend. And recently there was an interview with Martha Plimpton, who was River Phoenix's girlfriend for a long time. And she was on a podcast recently. I can't remember which one it was, but I heard a clip about it. And she was talking about that because the person interviewing her said, "Is it okay if I ask you about River Phoenix?" She's like, "Yeah." And the way she talks about him, it's like everybody who talks about him is like, he was such a profound, amazing human being. And he just didn't really know how to deal with the fame side of life and what that did to him. So it was just very, very heartbreaking. That one will always stick with me. And dang it, next year, no matter what, we are going to talk about River Phoenix. We are going to talk about River Phoenix no matter what. Even if I have to rent every single movie, share it with everybody, somehow get all the libraries to have every single movie available for everybody. We are going to cover River Phoenix next year. So
Let's do it.
So we're going to cut to a break. And when we come back, we're just going to kind of go back and forth and name a few others that hit us hard.
When you hear Lululemon, you probably think of Align yoga pants, weightlessly soft, like you're wearing next to nothing. That's why you see them in class. at the grocery store, and in the park. But did you know about skirts with built-in liner shorts so you can still jump for the Frisbee? And tanks and bodysuits? With Align's iconic stretch, you won't want to take it off. And with endless style options, you don't have to. Shop in-store or online at lululemon.com.
Okay, so Carla, what is another death that really affected you?
Another death that was a very big deal to me was George Michael. George Michael, and I talked about him on the episode that we did a couple of years back on George Michael, but his music has always meant a lot to me. He has just one of the most beautiful voices. I love so many of his songs. So many of his songs are just like a constant part of my life in one way or another. And he died, I think it was around Christmas. I don't remember if it was like on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. But I remember I was sitting with my family. We were about to eat. And then I got a text from a friend of mine. He said, "Did you hear about George Michael?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So I go and I look it up, and I was just a mess the rest of the day. And I didn't expect, well, first of all, it was such an unexpected death. He was 50. He wasn't particularly old, and he had been on and off struggling with health, but I don't think anybody knew the extent to which he was struggling with his health, because he certainly did his best to keep it under wraps. And that's one thing with George Michael, is that he was obviously in the public eye, but there were so many things that he kept to himself, which I think is great. And I think more celebrities should keep more of their lives to themselves. Not everything needs to be content. Not everything needs to be publicized. But yeah, I was just shocked and devastated. And to this day, I think that losing him was a huge loss for the entire world.
When he died, so many people that were so impactful in music died around the same. And it was such a it was so awful. It was so awful, so heartbreaking.
It was just nonstop, it felt like. Just on and on.
Yeah, it really did. So Tiff.
It's funny because they say death comes in threes, and it's for musicians, it feels like it comes in sixes and nines.
Yeah.
It's like this big, giant group within maybe about a year or so. It's really wild. There's that, what is it, the 27 group?
Yeah.
The ones that all died at 27, which is really creepy and freaky.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with somebody who actually didn't make 27, and that's Tupac. And he died in 96. He was only 25. He didn't make 26. And his death it's a murder. Some people say it's an assassination, because he was more than just a musician. He was an activist. He was moving into a new form of being. He was elevating his art. And I think a lot of people actually didn't like that. They wanted him to remain as was. They wanted him to remain status quo, but he was moving into a new form of self. He was getting more self-recognition. And I think that scared a lot of people, because Tupac always had a lot of things to say. Maybe people didn't like it, but he wasn't afraid to share what he felt. And I wish we had all been able to see what movement he would have been able to make. In his, you start really kind of coming into yourself in your 30s and in your 40s. And I would have loved to have seen Tupac at 35 and at 45 and just be a fully realized adult, because he did so much in that 25 years. It would have been awesome to see him 20 years down the line and see what he would have been able to accomplish, because I think it would have been really great, because his music has really lived on, and we're going on 30 years almost past his death. So I think it would have been really amazing to see how 55-year-old Tupac would be reacting to what we have, because I think he would have some very, very harsh words for fascism overall.
Yeah. Yeah. And you actually see right now a lot of quotes being shared on TikTok right now from him, too. So around and on all social media platforms. So, yeah. Sticking with the music theme, and this was a pretty recent one, Andy Fletcher from Depeche Mode. And that one hit me hard because Depeche Mode, as everybody knows, that's like my soul band. And I remember hearing about that. Like I was sitting at my desk and saw the news, and I just instantly started crying, and I cried like all day. That was a really, really hard one for me. And I think it's because there's those bands or those musicians, and you just think they're always going to be there. Like
Mm-hmm.
Depeche Mode was always at that point going to be those three people. And to lose him felt like losing part of the heart of the band. And that was really, really hard to deal with. That was a really painful one and a really sad one. And it is one of those where you're like, wait, that can't happen yet. And that can't happen for another like 50, 60 years, right? And so that one was really, really painful. I think sometimes, and we've mentioned quite a few musicians so far, I think there's something really haunting about musicians dying. I'm not saying it's not haunting when other people die, but there's something about it, and I think it's because what they've left behind is so personal, because especially if they wrote any of their songs, because it's like they've left behind a piece of their soul right there for you to listen to anytime. So, and it can be like they are there still. If that makes sense. So I think there's something about it that can be a little bit more haunting. But yeah, that one really, really got to me. Okay, so Carla, what's another one for you?
Another one was Juan Gabriel. And Juan Gabriel, oh my gosh, you talk about superstars. He was a massive, massive star. He was a Mexican singer and songwriter, just absolutely legendary live shows and performances. He was known worldwide, and he was significant also in that there were always rumors about his sexuality. And, you know, his music, when his music was most popular, it was like definitely the 70s, I think possibly a bit before that, but definitely the 70s and 80s. And 70s and 80s in Mexico, incredibly difficult to be out. So there were rumors. He never confirmed or denied. At one point, there was a spouse, but it's like, is this like a marriage just for appearances? And then there was an interview that he did when an interviewer just asked him flat out, "Are you gay?" And he said, "Lo que se ve no se pregunta." Basically, if you can see it, you shouldn't ask. You shouldn't need to ask. So he never gave a definitive answer, but that was as definitive an answer as I think he could feel safely giving. He is still a huge icon to queer Mexican people, and just his music is beautiful. There are so many songs that are so special and lovely and wonderful and fun to sing along to. And there will never be somebody like Juan Gabriel in talent, in impact. He was a very important, just a very important presence in that time, and I think any time. And it's not like he was young when he died. This isn't a case of like, oh, he was taken so soon. He wasn't, elderly, but he had certainly lived a long life. But it was still devastating. And a lot of people would like to say that, oh, this is abuela music. This is what my mom puts on to clean. But the amount of people, younger people, who were also just devastated when he died, it's a testament to the reach of his art.
Yeah, and can we stop asking certain questions of people?
Seriously.
None of your business.
And it's not your place, and Yeah. So, Tiff.
I was going to try to bounce around, but I have so many musicians on my list. I'm going to keep it rolling. So,
Yeah.
out of respect, right? Probably I would say he's my number one singer. He is. He's my number one performer, and that's Michael Jackson. And I know it's a polarizing subject for some people, but in terms of being literally not just the king of pop, but the person of pop, let's keep it real. He was, there's no, he's incomparable. There is no comparison. Don't try. There is no, there is no try. Just do,
Yeah.
just do. There is no try. We're talking about somebody who put their full being into performance and into the words and the sounds. And all you need to do to see that is look at Michael when they're filming We Are the World.
Oh, God.
Look at Michael's face when Cyndi Lauper is screeching and when Glenn Fry is coming in with what he thinks are some great vocals. And Michael is standing in the background with those glasses, with the sunglasses, and it's just stone face because he just came through with this beautiful vocal, when you're down and out. And then Glenn Fry comes in and it's just like, no, just no,
Yeah.
just no. But that's the beauty of Michael Jackson. He was such a perfectionist. He expected perfection of everybody that was also performing with him. And it's like, Michael, dear, you are on another level, sir. They can't be on your level. They can't even look at your level. And all you had to do to see that, I still remember a concert that he did in Germany. Nope, scratch that. Sorry, Austria. And I believe it was, I want to say 1991, the Dangerous Tour. You have never seen somebody come legitimately, stand there, look to the left, people passing out, look to the right, people passing out, ambulances, security, the people being passed over the top because they fainted. The man hasn't said anything. He hasn't sung anything. He hasn't danced yet. And everybody's just falling out. See, that would have been me. I would have fallen out. I'd have been in the back of an ambulance and missed the entire concert because that's the power of his performance. And people forget how strong of a writer he was. He was not just a singer. He was a complete performer. He was a singer-songwriter, and he also, helped choreograph his own things. And he was self-taught when it came to dance. Do you know how gifted you have to be that guy? He was built differently when it came to dance and overall performance, and his voice was absolutely gorgeous voice. And when I heard about his death, I was devastated, absolutely devastated, because he was doing his, what he called his farewell tour. This is it. And, we only got to see the rehearsals from that. So I was I was very, very sad about that one. Very sad.
Yeah, that was that was one of those like, where were you moments? There are some deaths that are like that. Like, where were you when you heard about this death?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one of them. Yeah.
Definitely. I was at work.
Yeah, I was too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I actually
gosh.
now that I think about it, I'm sorry to cut you off, Carla.
No.
I want to say my husband texted me that he had passed, and he knew it because he had a friend that worked at TMZ, and TMZ had the picture of him being wheeled into the hospital, but the sheet was already over his face. So I actually found out like 10 minutes before the news got that from TMZ. And I was like, okay, this has got to be fake, right? This is not real. But I think when you hear it, oh, TMZ has it, you're like, okay, shoot, it's real.
Yeah.
That's such a weird phenomenon to me about TMZ, because they're such trash, but they are always right about those things.
Yeah. I hate it.
I do too.
Because you know that people are getting sold out left and right.
Yeah.
And TMZ gets a hold of a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Definitely.
But it's true. Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep the music going here. And this was hit me because it made me think of my dad when it happened, because I wouldn't know about this person without my dad. And that's Gil Scott-Heron, who I'm sure everybody knows The Revolution will not be televised. He did a lot of amazing other work, jazz work, spoken word, poetry, everything. He was an amazing, amazing writer. And he died in 2011 he was only like 62 years old. So that's still young, really.
Yeah.
He had confirmed that he was HIV positive. But for me, my dad used to listen to his music all the time, and that's how I discovered him. And I just really urge people to go and listen to a lot of his work, because, I mean, like Public Enemy stated when he died, like, we wouldn't exist without you. We wouldn't, like, so many musicians and so many artists wouldn't have existed without him and the work he did. I think, like, some of his other songs that are great are Lady Day and John Coltrane is a really good one. Home is Where the Hatred Is. Whitey on the Moon is a really fantastic song as well. So I just really, lots of activism, lots of powerful lyrics and words. And his voice also was very beautiful, I think. And especially if you like jazz music too, I think you really would like him. So that was one that I remember that in 2011 when that happened, and it just instantly took me back to my dad listening to that. And I'm not encouraging smoking, but my dad was a smoker. And my dad listening to that and smoking and talking about seeing Gil Scott-Heron and everything like that, and just those memories and how important that music was to so many people and how important his words were to so many people. So, yeah. Okay, Carla.
Okay, the next one for me, growing up in Mexico and even going back in the summers, I would immediately watch whatever telenovelas were playing, because that was just my absolute love and pastime. And when I was I think this was in high school, there was a telenovela called Alcanzar una estrella. And it's one of those, like, oh, this girl, she's so ugly, and there's a guy, and he's rich and handsome and famous, and he's like, oh, hey, you're kind of homely looking, but you seem kind of nice. And she's like, oh, me? What do you mean? And then he's like, hey, maybe if you put down your hair and take off your glasses, and can you sing at all? And what, me? Sing? I guess. And so he falls in love and she falls in love, and then there are problems, but then they get through them together because that's the power of love. Anyway, so the female protagonist was played by Mariana Levy. Mariana Levy was an actress, she was a singer, she was in the supergroup Timbiriche, which pretty much anybody who knows anything about, Mexican teen music knows about Timbiriche. It's one of the biggest pop anythings, and they're still active, but they have like a rotating group of people. But Mariana Levy to me, she was very special because she wasn't quite as like Europeanish as a lot of the other members of Timbiriche. She also seemed just more down to earth and more humble than a lot of other of her contemporaries. And she was in a lot of soap operas that I just loved. When she died, and she died really young. She was, I think she may have been in her early 30s, maybe. So when we found out that she died, it was heartbreaking because she just seemed like a really nice person. And even if she wasn't, at least she portrayed characters who seemed very real. The premises of the novelas were absolute, what the hell, who came up with this and what were they on? But her characters and her approach to acting and her voice is so beautiful. She has a very sweet voice. And I've always wondered, like, what would have happened? Like, what turn might her career have taken if she had lived longer? So that's one that hit me very hard, because I really loved her. I thought she was fantastic, and I enjoyed everything that she was in.
And you can also go back. I know this is like a weird segue from that, but you can go back and listen to us talk about telenovelas. That was so long ago. That was before we did Christian Bale. That was before we did Christian Bale.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, Christian.
Ooh, I'm gonna tell that you said that.
I'm sorry, Christian. That was inappropriate.
Somewhere Christian is going,
Oh, man.
He doesn't
100%.
mind.
Hopefully,
That Erin, she's so funny. In fact, I didn't even know that's what you meant until you said that.
oh man. So Tiff.
I'm going to go fairly recent. And this one also hit me really, really hard. And that was Chadwick Boseman. And you talk about somebody who was so private. And I know we just talked about how TMZ gets everything. And when TMZ gets it, you know it's happening. Nobody knew. Nobody knew until his family made the announcement that he had passed away. Nobody knew about Chadwick Boseman's death. And, you know, I think I've said, I know I've, co-signed with Erin about River Phoenix being like a generational talent. And I truly believe that Chadwick Boseman was also a generational talent. He was only 43 when he passed away. And I will always remember the date that he passed away, because my grandfather actually died the day after Chadwick did. Now, my grandfather had the blessing. We were blessed to have him for 93 years. And that's sad that Chadwick only got 43. But in that 43 years, just look at the impact that his performance had. Honestly, the first, what I would really consider, Black superhero that resonated across the screen. Yes, there's been others that have had, like Eartha Kitt being Catwoman. We won't talk about Halle Berry's turn as Catwoman, but it's there.
Please don't. It exists. We can acknowledge that it exists, and that's it.
We acknowledge it and we move on.
Yes.
But the massive appeal of Chadwick's turn as Black Panther, only Chadwick, along with, Ryan Coogler's exceptional direction, could have brought that movie to the heights that it did. And just the gravitas, man, that he brought to roles, the fact that we only had him for 43 years it's so hard. It's so hard. But then when you hear about this man had cancer during the entirety of filming Black Panther and managed to push through the pain and whatever else he was going through, the stress, obviously, of battling cancer, because he battled it for like 5 years. So managing to do that's incredible. Just the fortitude that he was able to have. And I really wish that he had been able to win that final Oscar. And I know people, when they announced Anthony Hopkins, people were like, and then the podcast, then the what's the word I'm looking for? The Oscars just shut down. It was like it just went black.
Oh yeah,
After
yeah, it did. Yeah,
it just went black.
That's
It's
so
like,
weird.
what just happened? It was so weird, right? Because I think people expected, okay, it's Chadwick's swan song, right? It's him getting it. It's like it's in memoriam. And what can be better than giving somebody a posthumous Oscar, right? In his final performance. And it's like, what? No. No. But that one was terrible.
Yeah, it really, really was. And it also served for people to not judge people the way they look. You have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of speculation before he died. And so that's another thing. It served as a reminder for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
He actually had deleted his social media after that. He was doing that Q&A, that interview. And yes, I mean, he he looked ill, but people don't know if it was for a role or something, to that effect. Look at Christian Bale in The Machinist. Uh, I mean, he wasn't ill. He was doing it for a role or somebody gaining a lot of weight for a role. George Clooney, when he, gained so much weight for, what was that movie?
Syriana.
Yeah, for Syriana. I mean, you don't know what's happening. And it's like, don't speculate. Don't speculate because you never know what somebody's going through.
Yeah. That was a very devastating loss, though, especially the young losses, and when you never get to see what their talent could have done beyond that because they were so talented already. So definitely, yep. Well, I'm going to an actor as well, and this is one that was so devastating when it happened, and that is Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger, that was such a shocker to me when he died, and I still get sad when I watch him in movies. I still have this twinge of sadness because he was such a great actor, and by all accounts, he seemed like a very kind person. And it's another one of those where lost so young and tragically. And I mean, all these are tragic, but, in such a shocking way. And when they had so many other great and wonderful performances in them, he was such an incredible talent. And it was just very, 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 very sad loss. And I remember very vividly hearing about it and just being in shock. So yeah, it was another one of those where you're like, nope, that can't be real. So that one will always, always make me sad. When I was discussing doing this, I just instantly, that's like, other than River Phoenix, that was the first name that popped in my head. And so every time I even you see him a lot right now because of the 25th anniversary of Brokeback Mountain. So he's like everywhere. Yeah. And it just makes me sad all over again seeing him. Okay, so we're going to do one more round here. I know it's hard because there's a lot of people, but just for time. So Carla, what is one more?
Well, first, seconding Chadwick Boseman, I was in tears for days afterwards. The other person I'll mention is Eduardo Palomo, and it's similar to Mariana Levy. He was a telenovela star, and he was actually just starting his music career. He started later in life, relatively. He was still like in his 30s. It's not like he was in his 80s or anything, but he was still pretty young, and he was really coming into his own as somebody that people were interested in as a leading man. He had been protagonist in a couple of telenovelas. It's not, but he went from a kind of nerdy looking guy that he was in a novela with Mariana Levy, actually. And they were an adorable couple because they were just so sweet and so goofy. And he was just seemed like a really sweet, goofy guy. So when he was cast in Corazón Salvaje, everybody was just shocked at the transformation because he took that role on and he delivered a performance that was magnetic. And with him, the character of Juan del Diablo was so sexy and so just alluring. And part of that allure was that he still had that Eduardo Palomo spirit where he just seemed like a genuinely good person. So this was a character that, seemed like really rough around the edges and all of that. But with Eduardo Palomo, he gave him like another dimension and made him really an interesting character, not just a caricature of like a pirate dude. He was a pirate, not in the, yo-ho mateys way, in the, oh, I'm going to steal your cargo way, I had to clarify just because, people get confused about all the kinds of pirates. Yes. And it happened to be, his co-star in Corazón Salvaje also passed away young of breast cancer. But Eduardo Palomo, well, Edith Gonzalez, she had a long protracted illness, and Eduardo Palomo just died. One day he was here, one day he wasn't. And I believe it was like a heart condition that just out of nowhere showed up. But, it was just so sad because, again, he was just really coming into his own as an actor, and he was starting to become a singer. So he never really reached the height of his career. We'll never know where his career could have taken him because he's just gone. He actually had just had his first role in a U.S. movie. It's called A Day Without Mexicans, and he's in it very briefly. He's like the dad, and then it's one of those things where it's like, what if all the Mexicans disappeared? And then he's there for a scene, and then he's gone because all the Mexicans are gone, and then he comes back at the end because, hey, all the Mexicans are back. But I just wonder, how far could he have taken his career? And also, he just seemed like a genuinely decent person. And it's death is sad and all of that, but when it's a decent person, it's even harder to take. And I think I generally, all of these people that I'm mentioning, I think they were decent people. And it breaks my heart that they're no longer with us.
Yeah. Very true about the decent person thing. It makes it harder for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tiff?
I'm going to put one out there that might be slightly controversial just because of the amount of attention regarding her personal/private life was given. And that's Princess Diana. And it's funny because I don't know what it is, just kind of a cultural thing. Like in Black households, Diana is beloved in Black households. I have no idea why, but she is. It's just one of those things that I think people see a kindred spirit of sorts with her. She's so struggled with everything from being married off to this old man and I'm not saying that Charles was old when they got married, but he was too old for her. She was 19 when they got married, and he was in his early 30s. No. And it was a disaster from the beginning because marrying somebody who is clearly in love with somebody else is just not the done thing. And she did, what is that stiff upper lip British kind of a personality that people champion, that British people champion. And Diana wasn't built like that. Diana was built with emotions, and she didn't mind showing those emotions, and they beat her down for that. They bullied her and, tried to chip away at her personality. And the fact that she was able to still blossom even under that type of stress and strain, and for all the mistakes that she made, and she made some mistakes, don't get me wrong, she did, and her biographer lays that out. For all the mistakes that she made, she was always known as an intensely loving mother, fantastic mother. She tried to surround those boys with as much normalcy as you can in that type of environment. And don't forget, she is a woman scorned, although I don't think she cared very much who scorned her. It's the fact that he did scorn her that in such a public way. And I remember her wearing that black dress when she gets out of the car, and they call it the F me dress because she looked amazing. So fashion icon, loving personality, and don't forget her charity work, which was just going to the to the mines, visiting children who had lost limbs from that, hugging babies that had HIV and AIDS. People don't understand how big of a deal that was in the late 80s. They do not understand. Her death was exceptionally sad. She was 36. 36 years old. I mean, just unbelievably sad.
Yeah, and it was basically a murder, really, if you're looking at
Yeah.
it. So, yeah. That was very sad. I remember that. Yep. Well, the last one I will mention is actor Philip Seymour Hoffman, because this was another one that really shocked the hell out of me. And another one where, I think he was one of the most talented actors ever to exist, and just such a remarkable range of talent as well. I mean, he could do comedy too. He was really funny, and I don't think people talk about that a lot, but he was just so incredible to watch. And I'm sure he had like hundreds of fantastic performances left in him to go. And it just really was one that you didn't expect. Like a lot of these that really, really shocked me are ones you didn't expect. And of course, you're never going to expect one. But I think like if you're watching someone, if they've been open about an illness or something, you're watching, or like they're older, or like, it was sad when Betty White died, but we knew that was going to happen soon because, no one can live forever. And so I think sometimes when it happens, when the person is still young and it's such a sudden thing where you still were expecting like them to be the people that you watched act until they were 80 or 90 years old and then were forced to retire kind of thing. And that's what I expected from Philip Seymour Hoffman. So that was a great loss. Yeah. I think that's funny, Tiff, that you knew that was going to be my final choice, because I had like 10 that I was trying to decide between.
I knew it. I just knew it. She already said Heath. I knew you were going to have Heath, River Phoenix, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. So when you said Heath and River before, I was like, nope, it's Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Tiff, next time we need to have like a little side bet.
Exactly. We should have. I just should have been like, Carla, bet you $1 and a bag of M&Ms that Erin is gone with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I'm that predictable now.
That's called being steady, Erin. That's steady.
Okay, well, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to just briefly talk about why we think celebrity deaths have such a profound impact on people.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit Venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American Innovation.
So, Carla, why do you think celebrity deaths have such a profound impact?
It's funny. There was a celebrity once who was just having a very candid chat with fans. And he asked, what is it about celebrities that makes people so attached? And, people gave this reason and that reason and whatever. And I didn't get to speak, which is fine. But my thought is, we see so much of them. We know so much about them. And whether they're a private person or not, even the persona that they present, we get attached to. We get attached to them being part of our lives. I think with musicians in particular, music is such a universal thing. It's something that you don't need to understand the language. You don't need to know what the person looks like. There are so many ways in which you can really lose yourself in the art, and it touches you it can touch you in a profound way and in an everlasting way. So when somebody who is bringing that joy to you, that whatever emotion it is that you're feeling, when they're suddenly gone, it's really jarring. It's just one of these things that humans are. Loss is part of being human, but we weren't necessarily built for loss that way. You know, it's one thing to lose people who are around you, people that you actually know, and where your feelings are mutual. You know, usually if you're mourning somebody like in your family, you know, there's probably love there. So what is it that makes this very one-sided relationship matter to the point where we become devastated when somebody passes? And I think it's just that, like, they give something to our lives that is irreplaceable. And the suddenness is, you know, again, especially if they're on the younger side, if it's a shocking loss, it's difficult to overcome because there's no real closure. It's not like you can, you know, you can talk to your fellow fans about it, but it's not like you have that kind of relationship where you can say, well, they knew that I loved them and I know that they loved me. In that way, I don't want to say that it's more difficult than like losing somebody that you're close to, but there is an element of that because you don't get that closure. You don't get that feeling of mutuality when they're gone.
Yeah, well put. Tiff?
Honestly, I think it's because we tend to, at least for me personally, when we lose somebody that's close to us, I tend to dissociate quite a bit from the loss, especially if it's a loss that somebody in your family or a very close friend provides. It's hard to, I think, grieve somebody that is close to you. But for some reason, when it's a, air quotes, celebrity, even if you don't know them, it feels like it's a little bit easier to lament their loss. And I don't know if it's just me that's built that way or if other people kind of feel like that. But I think it's that dissociative type of dichotomy that happens. I can see somebody like Chadwick Boseman and just know that he would have been just probably one of the top 5 greatest actors that we've ever seen, and lament that loss and just feel devastated by it. Whereas if I have somebody in my family that I've lost, it might not feel the same because I don't know if I know them too well, and I just have to remove myself somewhat from those feelings in order to kind of maintain a sense of levelness and evenness in my life. So I'm not sure exactly why that happens. I know for me, that's how it feels. So I don't know if other people feel the same way.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying with that. Yeah. I think the only thing I'll add is I think another part of it is that person might have helped create art that was maybe with you at a specific point in your life, or they're musicians, like maybe the songs or the music played during a point in your life, or maybe even helped you through trauma, or made you laugh. They made you laugh in something, or they made you think, or they made you feel like doing better, which I know may sound ridiculous, but I think that can be true. Art is it has such a profound impact. So I think that's another reason, is it feels like a person that helped create so many memories for you is gone. So it's almost like a piece of that memory or a piece of who you were then is gone as well, is the way it can feel sometimes. So, yeah. And please, we understand that the actual families, of course, the families and friends and everything suffer a greater loss than we do when we lose them. But also, please know that it is not trivial for people to feel a profound sadness when a celebrity dies or someone they didn't know. That's not something stupid, and it's not something to laugh at. So also throwing that out there because I know people like to do that. Okay, well, turning over to something a lot lighter, it is time to play 6 Degrees of Finn Whitrock. So it almost felt morbid doing this in a way. Connect Finn to someone who died. But I was like, okay, I know it's morbid, but hey. So did either of you play?
Carla, you didn't?
You did or you didn't? I was trying
No,
to
I
judge
straight up forgot.
Okay.
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 I did.
You did. Okay. Who did you?
Okay, Tiff, I get it. You're better than me.
Oh, please. Pshaw. So I took your final pick, Erin, and went with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was in Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with Megan Byrne, who was in Landline with Mr. Finn Wittrock.
Awesome. I think landline's been used maybe 2 times, and I think that's including you just using it just now. So
Hey, yo.
awesome. Yes, Carla.
I have one, and I
Okay.
came up with it myself with my brain.
Oh, okay.
Oh my
Okay.
God. Okay, are you ready for this? Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. Philip Seymour Hoffman was in the, what's it called? The something Mr. Ripley.
The talented Mr. Ripley.
The talented Mr. Ripley with Matt Damon, who was in The Big Short with Finn Wittrock.
Nice.
Matt Damon wasn't in the Big
Wait,
Short,
was he?
though, was he?
Never mind, JK.
No, but you can still use it.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. But, okay, I don't remember that connection. However, Matt Damon was in Good Will Hunting with Ben Affleck, who was in Snail Propaganda is Us with Finn Wittrock. So there you go.
Yeah, in Deep Water. Yes, the snail propaganda movie.
Yes.
Yes.
All of it from my brain.
That was very good.
All her brain, people.
I'm going to
Big,
continue. I'm going to continue the Philip Seymour Hoffman train of thought here since we're all using him. And I just wanted to use it because Philip Seymour Hoffman actually was in a play with Finn, and they starred in Death of a Salesman together. So, yeah. And also, Finn Wittrock's favorite movie, one of his favorite movies, is Magnolia. Magnolia is also my favorite movie, Finn. You missed out on your chance to talk about it with me, but hey, you can still come on and talk about it. And of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman was in Magnolia. So, yeah, there you go. Well, thank you, Carla and Tiff, for joining me for this heavy one. But I really enjoyed this conversation. It always feels weird to say that when you have a heavy, but I still enjoyed this conversation. So I'm going to go around and have everybody tell everybody where they can be found. And Carla can let everybody know where her podcast, Okay Real Quick, can be found. So Carla, take it away.
Thank you, Erin. I would like to inform you and invite you to listen to Okay Real Quick wherever you found this podcast. You can also look for our social media at Okay Real Quick Pod. There's also a website, believe it or not. It's okrealquick.podbean.com, and there's like a /. Otherwise, it doesn't always work. Anyway, if you can't find it there, just look for it on the social media or just go to Spotify and type Okay Real Quick Pod, and then that's where it shall be. As for me, you can find me and my art and my musings on TikTok and Instagram at Carla Temis or my website, carlatemis.com. That's CarlaTemis.com. And you can also find the podcast there because I have recently started updating my website with current information. So, if you want to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you. And Tiff.
Well, we love that Carla is living in the present. So, yay, Carla.
I'm trying.
There you go. There you go. So you can find me at Who Is Tiff Is Me here, there on the interwebs. Mostly I'm talking with the folks from the It's a Fandom Thing pod crew on the Discord. There are so many channels, people. We've got It's a Dean Thing pod people putting things out there, including that very spicy TikTok of Tiki-Takis, which was great. And then there's theater, and there's books, and there's TV shows, and there's movies. And we have Erin's favorite channel, which is It's a Horror Thing, which is fantastic. Ghostly noises. So yeah, I have other places set up. I don't really check them, but sure, why not?
And also, we have It's a Paula Watches Finn Whitrock things, and she's actually watching something with Finn Whitrock. She watched Ratchet. She's
Wow.
actually putting messages right now as we speak. She's about watching that. So she actually dusted off that channel and actually went and watched some Finn Whitrock things. So yes, so I don't have to, scold you anymore. Fergie the dog. You can follow her on TikTok and watch her cuteness. I haven't updated it in forever. I need to make a video sometime soon. I will do that, I promise. But she's a cutie. You can follow her on TikTok at Schroeder and Fergs. That's SCHROEDERANDFERGS. It's long, but it's worth it. To find all our past episodes, to find links to our social media, to find links to become a Patreon supporter for as little as $3 a month. You can get great bonus content. You get episodes a day early. You get ad-free content. Occasionally you win prizes. Head on over to our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. You can click the Support Us tab to find our Patreon. You can also click the link in the show notes as well. And next week, we are keeping the happiness train going, although this is kind of more of like jokey. But Carla and Tiff will be returning to talk about 80s movies that devastated us. So the 80s were trying to just ruin our lives. And so we're going to be talking about some of those movies. And then as a preview in a couple of weeks, Paula and Jen and I are going to talk about one of those movies that devastated us, The Never Ending Story. So
Oh, no.
A trio.
So lots of great stuff to look forward to. So until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, and Free Palestine.